Hi, welcome back to Slaggy Book Club. I'm Cameron and I've got 5 really good books to tell you about. 2 of them are nonfiction, 3 of them are fiction. They're all absolute 4 to 5 star bangers and I think you might like them too. You know, when you're just on a roll, I feel like this happens to me so often. Like sometimes I'll be reading book after book and like they'll be fine, but like I won't be loving any of them and I'll sort of start to lose enthusiasm a bit, right? And then sometimes I just read banger after banger after banger of like completely unputdownable books that I'm like given 4 and 5 stars left and right. And I'm like, hello? This is why I do what I do. That has been me lately. Like all of the books I've been reading lately have been so good. And so these 5 that I've selected from those really good books are like really, really good. Do you know what I mean? So I had to just come here and tell you about them and make sure that you have them on your TBR because your TBR, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Because if I love them, you'll love them. That's how this thing works, right? Speaking of, guys, please, if you do love my recommendations, make sure that you have hit that subscribe button. And if you ever find a good rec from me in a video that I post, please give it a thumbs up. Those little tiny buttons that only take a second to click actually make a really big difference to me and my ability to keep giving you all the good recommendations. So I really appreciate it. Let's jump in.
Hello, it's me from the future. Just a note, apparently my microphone was like fighting for its life the entire time I was filming this. So it does drop out from time to time just a little bit, but this was the second full take of this video that I had done this morning, so I'm not doing it again. I'm not gonna do it. You can just deal with it. No, it's not that bad. It's just like the sound dips just incrementally every now and then. Just be warned.
The first book that I have to tell you about is Loved One by Aisha Muharrar. Now, this is the debut novel from a writer, a very established writer. Do you know what she's written? Do you know what Aisha has written for some really good TV series? TV series like The Good Place, Parks and Recreation, Hacks. Yeah. So, you know, if you just sit with that fact for a second, I think that one of the brilliant minds behind those brilliant TV shows has put those writing skills into a novel, then you would expect some really bloody good things from this. And let me tell you, you'll get them. This book was one of the most life-affirming, heartwarming, and also heartbreaking, and also funny books that I have read in such a long time. This is absolutely, absolutely to a T, one of the perfect kind of stories that I just absolutely adore. It felt very much like a Caroline O'Donoghue type of story where there are all these like very minute, very poignant, very real, mundane observations. I feel like everything I underlined, all the little passages that really stuck out to me were just like these super relatable little moments that I feel like sometimes you'll be reading this book and if the author is really observant and really connected to human nature and the human experience, then they will weave these little moments or thoughts or observations or what have you into the story that are just like so pointedly relatable, but like you've never heard anyone acknowledge before. Do you know what I mean? Like you will read a sentence and be like, me, oh my god, what? Other people do this too. And I just love when an author is able to inject that really human element into their stories. And Aisha Muharrar does that fantastically. What a talented writer. This story follows our protagonist whose best friend has just passed away. And that friend of hers had actually become quite a famous musician. And so not only is this death very, but she also like didn't really see him that much in recent years because he was touring and away. And so she's reckoning with this loss of like her closest friend, and she talks to his mother, and mother says that she's looking for a few of his possessions. And our protagonist is like, I think I know where those might be. I'm going to go and find them. And so she goes on this journey back through her best friend's sort of last moments, last few months, trying to find these particular possessions that his mum is after. And on the way, she finds / meets his ex-girlfriend, and they get to talking. And that's sort of this complex thing that they're both sort of reckon with is their respective relationships to this guy who's died. And it's sort of unfolds in that way, right? And like I said, it is just really beautiful and heartwarming, and it is a book about grief, but it's not a sad book at all. It's not a sad story. It's just a really lovely story, and it's one of those books that, and Talking at Night by Claire Daverly really made me feel this way, but it just made me feel like I just want to give everyone I love a big hug, tell them I love them, you know? I love a book that will remind me how important it is to love. And on the topic of love and all of its forms and exploring that and what it can look like for different people, I have to recommend this Australian nonfiction that I recently read called Torn by Nicole Madigan. Now, this is for my Three Women Lisa Taddeo girlies. Okay, Three Women by Lisa Taddeo was an absolute awakening for me. I adored that book. I thought that it was so impressive, and it was also really fascinating. I personally love reading about relationships and love and sex and sexuality and all of those kinds of things in my nonfiction. That's sort of my area of interest. But I think a lot of people are really interested in relationships and human relationships and love. I mean, there's a reason that shows like Couples Therapy and Love Island are so popular, right? I think that we have this innate curiosity, but I think that curiosity is a lot deeper in that relationship, love, these are things that we pretty much all experience in our life and really big significant parts of our lives, right? But we're never ever really taught explicitly how to do them, you know, or how to navigate them or how they work, how to deal with the challenges that they bring, etc., right? And so when we are given the opportunity to peer into somebody else's relationship and somebody else's love and somebody else's challenges, we're absolutely absorbed by that, because it's like, okay, this might help me. Let me see if I can learn from this kind of thing. I think that's where that curiosity comes from, and I do think that it is very important. You know, it's like empathy fuel. You know, it really, I think that the more that we can learn about human relationships and how people connect and how love works and all of those things, the more connected we will all be, the more healthy our relationships will be. And so this book follows 4 real women Nicole spoke to, who all found themselves at one point torn as to whether or not to stay in their relationships. And it's very readable. It doesn't get super deep or critical or anything. We simply just sit with a woman, and she tells us the story of how she met her love, how they fell in love, how it was lovely and they built their life together, and then the little red flags that started popping up and the little bits that were sort of, okay, that sucks, but we'll work through it, or I'll forgive you, or whatever might have sort of happened. And then something bigger happened, and then they sort of found themselves questioning if they should be in the relationship at all, if they still love their partner, or if it's working, or if it's good for them to be in this relationship still. And then somehow another 3 years has passed, and they've been in this state of sort of trying to figure out whether or not they should leave their partner. And then, you know, they have to reckon with the fact that, well, okay, at this point, after all these years of building this life together, if I was to just up and leave him, that would really upend my entire life. And you sort of go through the motions with these women and get to where they ended up with them. And I think that it was, for me, this beautiful reminder of sort of like, love is very, very nuanced when you are inside of it. I think it's very easy to look at a relationship from the outside and see one party do something bad and say, well, then leave them, dump them, leave them for that. How could you forgive that? Why would, like, what? Dump them, sort of thing. You know what I mean? And when you're inside of it, it's very different. And there are a lot of things that contribute to how complex just leaving actually is. And hearing these stories, reading these stories, was a really powerful reminder of that. And also just a really fascinating read. You know, I'm nosy. I love hearing about people's goss and their relationships and their shit. And this was very much that. And I felt for all of these women A few of these stories were really quite sad. Don't expect anything super profound. I just think that on a human level, it was like a really fascinating and good read. My next recommendation is totally left of field, and I actually can't believe that I enjoyed this book enough to recommend it, but like at all, because I went into it purely out of curiosity. It's a AFL novel, and I was like, what is this, lit fic for men? What the hell does that look like? And so I just went into it because I wanted to know, like, what the fuck's an AFL novel gonna read like? I'm talking about Pissants by Brandon Jack. Now, you may have already seen me talk about this. I definitely have posted about it on my Instagram. Guys, for all the recommendations and reviews and new releases and everything you need to know, please make sure you're following the Sluggy Book Club Instagram. That is the one-stop shop for all the goss about the books. Anyway, Pissants is a crazy, crazy, crazy ride. It follows an AFL team, and each chapter is a different player, a different team member's perspective, right? And they're all so different. First of all, I have to say that to write a book with an ensemble cast where you get a bunch of different perspectives from each of the characters, and for each of those characters to sound completely different, is such a feat. It's such an impressive achievement for the writer. Well done, Brandon, because I feel like a lot of the time when you read a book that has multiple perspectives, a lot of them can sound really similar because the author has the author's voice and they struggle to switch that up for different characters. So kudos there. I also need to say that I did listen to the audiobook of this. And the voice actor was incredible. And I do think that a lot of what contributed to my enjoyment of this book was the performance by the voice actor and the way that he was able to portray each of the characters so comedically. Like, it was really enjoyable. But I also think that we do need to celebrate Brandon's writing, because as much as this is like a totally depraved and chaotic and fucked up Aussie bloke novel, Brandon is so clever and has done such an incredible job of picking apart the culture that he is talking about and in a way celebrating. He's like equal parts celebrating it and picking it apart. Katrina Menzies-Pike, who wrote a review of this book for The Guardian, titled her article such a perfect sort of way to sum up this entire book, right? Is this novel a critique or a celebration of toxic masculinity? Even it isn't sure. That's how it feels, right? Because I think for me, it was like such a thickly veiled critique of toxic masculinity and football culture that somebody like approaching it, a certain kind of reader approaching it with absolutely no critical analysis, would just think that it's a funny laugh. But really what it is, if you think about it for 2 seconds, is a scathing takedown of the rotten culture that exists behind closed doors at AFL clubs, that we, as much as it is all behind closed doors, what we see in the public is bad enough that we can only imagine how awful it is on the inside. And here we have someone who is actually behind those doors writing this story. And yes, it's fiction, but boy, is it a commentary. And I do feel funny recommending this particular book, particularly right now, given the prevailing conversation around the AFL that is happening at the moment. If you're in Australia, if you're not in Australia, basically, there are a lot of issues in our national sports culture. And one of those is homophobia. And we're one of the only, if not the only major sporting league in the world that does not and has not ever had an openly gay player in the men's league, right? So anyway, there's this huge issue with homophobia, and once again, another player has been caught using a homophobic slur while on the field, directed at another player, and a penalty comes with that. And the way that this penalty was sort of handed down, the people are not happy, including me. It's not good enough. And so there's this huge national conversation at the moment around this. And so I understand that now isn't really the time that Australians are looking for the light and the humor in the toxic culture of AFL. So it's kind of difficult to say hey, this book is so funny and makes really funny jokes out of the really awful stuff that happens in football clubs. But I feel like for a lot of people, this is probably the perfect approach, right? Because it is entertaining, it is fucked up, it is very blokey and larrikiny. There's all this like depraved shenanigans. But what it also is, beneath all of that, is an absolute takedown of the misogyny and homophobia and hypocrisy and substance abuse that goes on, and the gambling, sports relationship with gambling in Australia is fucked. There are like so many things that are addressed within this book in such a way that like it's not in your face and it is almost made a joke out of, but there are so many fantastic conversations to be had out of this. And you read the blurbs on the back of this book, right? And like there's one here from Instagram user Freudian Nip who says, Brandon Jack understands men so profoundly that it's surprising he is one. And it's so true. This book is so self-aware, and it's like incredible to think that a man who was a part of this culture can write this expose in a way. Do you know what I mean? Froome said it takes guts to tell the truth about a game that makes heroes out of sinners. Helen fucking Garner, who is a footy lover, said under its foul-mouthed laughing bravado lie deep wounds, a humble and endearing loneliness that moved me. Like it really, like it's just so beyond what you expect from it, and you have to take it from me, who is someone who does not care about football at all, about sport at all. I freaking adored this book, and it's so impressive, and it's more than just a footy book. Now, if you really want to talk about misogyny, I've got a really harrowing recommendation for you. This one's a nonfiction, and it's the new one from Laura Bates, the author of Men Who Hate Women. This one is called The New Age of Sexism, and it's fucked. How AI and emerging technologies are reinventing misogyny. Yes, in this book, Laura Bates investigates and explores all the fun new ways that AI is enhancing, promoting, uplifting, upholding misogyny. It's deeply disturbing. I don't know how this woman sleeps at night. Like the levels of research that she devotes her life to, the world that she immerses herself in, the awful stuff that she is exposed to all the time. Like she must have an incredible therapist. I'll say that much. Reading this book alone is like deeply disturbing. And there's a part of me that like when I read these kinds of books, it's like, I'm not the one who should be reading this. There are people who need to change who should be reading these kinds of books, and all it's doing is making me angry. But it's important knowledge to be armed with and spread the word of. And as disturbing and upsetting and awful as it is, it's important, right? And so yeah, if you have the stomach for it, then I implore you to read it and talk to people about it. It really does expose all the horrible ways that technology is just absolutely feeding misogynistic cultures, from like basic, gender biases in like large language models and stuff to like full AI sex robot brothels that are popping up around the world, or like those little like these apps where you can have a digital girlfriend that are marketed as just like friends for lonely people and helping with like a loneliness epidemic. But then it's like these women are like sexy booby girls who are trying to make you sext them and then encourage you to kill you. So there's some crazy stuff going on out there in the technological world. It's really not looking good for women. Words that have never been spoken before. It does make me want to run away to the woods and just like live a completely disconnected life. If anyone wants to join me, maybe we could start like a commune book club kind of vibe where we just like spend our days reading books and tending to the garden and being disconnected. I'm more and more feeling like that's sort of my ideal future, because shit's fucked. Finally, guys, still not lighthearted, but a bit more fun and playful. This next book was the best one that I read while I was traveling, and it is a scathing takedown of the beauty industry. It's called Natural Beauty by Ling Huang, and Australians, I think it's only available as an ebook. I'm so sorry. I read it on my Kobo, tried to find the physical copy, and I don't think we have it here. Google it. This book follows a young piano protege who has to give up piano for reasons, and then finds herself poached, I suppose, by a recruiter at this cult beauty company. And she gets to enjoy the perks of working at this beauty company, which include free products and the obligation to utilize their services and treatments. And she suddenly like starts to get really beautiful, and she's like glowing, and like all the products are really working. And then we soon discover that it's much darker than it seems on the surface. And I feel like it's very reminiscent of, mind you, I haven't watched it, but what The Substance is all about. It feels very like The Substance. Like there is a lot of body horror. It is very much like this eerie, dark thriller vibe that is like a commentary on the beauty industry and like all these sort of procedures and potions that are becoming more and more popular and accessible. It's dark and disturbing and completely engaging and exciting. I'm really loving this new, I guess, trend that we're seeing in the arts, where whether it's books or movies, that there are a lot of stories coming out about the beauty industry, and I really like them. So if you really like them too, Natural Beauty by Ling Huang is fabulous book, and I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed reading it. So there you go. Those are 5 books for you to add to your TBR. Jump in the comments and let me know if any of these sound good to you. Which one will you be reading? To recap, we have got Loved One by Aisha Muharrar, The New Age of Sexism by Laura Bates, Pissants by Brandon Jack, Torn by Nicole Madigan, and Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. Again, guys, I absolutely loved all of these books. These are like the 5 best books that I've read in the last few months. So just like believe me when I say they are all totally worth the read if they sound like the kind of thing that you're interested in. If you have read any of these already, please come and talk to me about them. Jump down here and let's yap because there's so much to say. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you in my next video. Love you so much.